The Midwest Regional Homebrewers Conference is coming to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, November 5th. The MRHC will feature a keynote from author Stan Hieronymus, seminars from Blickman Engineering, Matt McCarroll, and lots of exhibits and representatives from ingredient and equipment companies. Clubs from all over the Midwest will be setting up booths and serving their best beers. Come in early. The Hopheads of Southwest Missouri will be hosting a club night on November 4th for clubs to come and discuss homebrewing in all its splendor. Make your plans now. The Midwest Regional Homebrewers Conference, November 5th in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. For the love of brewing. For more information, check out Midwest BrewCon on Facebook or Twitter. Midwest BrewCon. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, September 15th, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Chris Colby, editor of Beer and Wine Journal and author of the Homebrewer's Recipe Bible, joins us to talk about tannins. What do they bring to beer? Do we need them or want them? How do we manage them in our process? If you're new to homebrewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first. Go to basicbrewing.com, click on our associate link on the right-hand side of the page. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show. We greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory. We're in the Stitcher app. We're on Google Play Music. And we're now on the iHeartRadio app. I think last time I said iHeart Music. Maybe you knew what I meant. Anyway, so awesome. We're lots of places. And finally, if you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our virtual guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. On the personal brewing front, my latest sour project, my kettle sour project, is ready to transfer or package. It's another 100% rye beer, low gravity, less than 2% ABV. I soured it with probiotics this time, the Good Belly mango shots, and I tried keeping it at room temperature during the souring phase in a carboy, instead of using the high-gravity system to maintain the temperature at higher levels. And I'm wondering now if I should have warmed it up a bit. It didn't sour as quickly as I expected. And I'm also wondering if the low gravity of the beer itself has something to do with the process. Is there less stuff for the lactobacillus to eat and therefore sour? Do bigger beers sour faster than smaller beers? It's something I need to research further. Maybe the Milk the Funk guys know something about that. Regardless, my plan is now to divide the beer up and rack it into different fun stuff. First of all, blackberries, since we like the blackberry Pilsner, quote-unquote Pilsner that I did. Also, I got some grapefruit juice after talking to Chris Colby about putting grapefruit juice or grapefruit in IPAs. I know that I'll have to do kind of a delicate balancing act to make sure that that one doesn't come out too sour, because the kettle souring plus grapefruit juice might be a little too much. I don't know. We'll have to do some tasting on that. And, of course, I'll package up some of the plain, too, to compare to the original version. I still have a little bit of the original on tap, and the more I drink it, the more I like it. I really like the combination of the subtle tartness and then the hop flavors that go along with that beer, and it's just darned refreshing. So I have high hopes for these next batches coming out too. This is the last ad you'll hear for the 12th anniversary celebration for our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. The time is ticking on some great deals. Now through September 17th, you can get $12 off orders more than $96. Just enter the code 12 of 96. That's 1212OF96, all one word, when checking out. A 12% discount on their high gravitas beer ingredient kits through September 17th. Plus, you can still take part in the raffle to give away a high-gravity brew-in-a-bag system or $1,000 in credit towards a Brew Easy or build-your-own brewery system that uses the high-gravity controllers. You can find out all the details about the raffle on highgravitybrew.com. And the winner will be drawn on September 17th. Also, on September 17th, this Saturday, Steve and I will be at High Gravity in Tulsa to have Basic Brewing stuff for sale and to sign from 4 to 6. And we'll be at the party, which will be at Burn Co. Barbecue from 7 until 10. I'm really looking forward to that. Tickets for the party are on sale now at highgravitybrew.com. So and I'm not sure if they're sold out. I forgot to check. So, so go to highgravitybrew.com and check that out. We hope to see you there. Find out about all the good stuff, again, at highgravitybrew.com. We congratulate Desiree and Dave on 12 years of successful home brewing, shop supply running, and boy, you can't ask for nicer folks. Chris Colby is good at explaining aspects of brewing that can get complicated quickly. And if you check out his articles on beerandwinejournal.com, you already know that. This week, we talked to Chris about tannins. Chris Colby, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
We're about a week away from the official release of your book. Is that right?
Yeah, it comes out September 20th.
The Homebrew Recipe Bible. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
All right.
It's got 101 homebrew recipes ranging from normal, quote unquote, normal beer recipes to some fairly crazy ones.
You crazy? You can go to Amazon.com right now and pre-order, right?
Yes. Yep. And same with Barnes & Noble. And I think there's probably some other sites too, but those are the bigger.
That's very exciting. Very, very exciting. But right now, let's talk about tannins. And other than sounding like a 1970s Quinn Martin production, what is a tannin?
Tannins are a class of molecules. They were originally named they were molecules that could tan animal hides. And anyway, they are molecules that are either or sort of similar in structure to tannic acid, which is a big polyphenolic molecule. It's basically made of a molecule that's a ring of carbon, just repeated over and over and over. And anyway, in beer, tannins are unwanted in the excess. If you have an extremely tannic beer, it's going to have an astringency to it. When you taste it, there'll be a sort of a puckering, like as similar to in some sorts of tea that you might drink, and you generally don't want that in your beers. In some beers, it's unavoidable. Like if you barrel age a beer or whatever, that it's going to pick up. If it picks up any flavors from the oak in the barrel, that's going to be tannic, but that's not only unavoidable. If you barrel age a beer, you probably are intending it to pick that up. And and again, also in some wines, they want some tannins, which give it what wine people call structure. But generally, for the vast amount of beers, you want the tannin level to be actually low, but not zero. They found that if you have absolutely no tannins in your beer, it tastes weird. But you want some in your beer, but not enough that they actually that you can notice the astringency from them.
On the blackberry pilsner that I brewed for my wife, there is a bit of a it's not it's not exactly a tartness. It's not a sourness like there's a contamination from a wild yeast or lactobacillus or something like that. But there's a pucker in the beer that is actually a nice balance because it's not too sweet. Do you think that could be tannins from like the skins of the blackberries?
Could be a couple things. For one thing, fruit like that is just acidic, so it's gonna lower the pH of the beer, make it a little more tart. But also, yeah, the skins on fruit are frequently very tannic. In winemaking, for example, one of the places the tannins come from, seeds and stems are a big source, but they're secondarily the skins are a bit of a source. And yeah, you can have, there are tannins on not all but most plant tissues or whatever, and the skins of fruits are one thing that have tannins. So yeah, it could be that.
What are some styles of beer that where you would want to encourage tannins?
Yeah, again, most of them you don't, but there are a few that it might benefit from. Like, it's typically beers that have, either a wide range of flavors already or strong flavors, and a little bit of astringency helps give it some balance, or especially if there's like a single strong flavor, it's a little bit of astringency might give it a balance. One example would be sour beers. Lambic brewers traditionally sparge with hotter than normal water, compared to what brewers making non-sour beers do. And that's because a little bit of astringency in a lambic is a good thing. It's got the powerful sourness to it, and just a little bit of, there's not a harsh astringency in those beers, but just a hint of sort of that puckering tea, tannic astringency does the beer good. Likewise, in some very big beers, the closer a beer gets to tasting like a wine, the more that it might benefit from having a little bit of tannin in it, just like wines do, or red wines do. And it's from there on, it's just sort of, I'd say fruit beers too frequently, because, and I know that's also unavoidable. When you taste the fruit, you're used to tasting the tannins on the skin, and so when you taste the beer, you're expecting the whole mix of the fruit flavor. And after that, it might be a sort of catch can thing where you just, if you think your beer might benefit from it, try it. I mean, in most cases, a general moderate strength, well-balanced beer is not going to benefit. It's going to detract from the beer overall, because beer is, at least in that sense, relatively smooth. But like I said, in sour beers, in big beers, and in some beers that maybe have a strong, some sort of strong, intense flavor that might be well to balance. Those would be the kinds where you would look for a little bit.
So let's talk about, first of all, how to avoid getting tannins in the beer. What are some factors that will bring tannins into the beer, and how can we avoid having those?
Yeah, in brewing, tannins come from a variety of sources. The major one in most cases is the malt. There's tannins on the husk of the barley. There's also tannins in hops, and then any other plant material you throw into if you're brewing a flavored beer, any other plant material, including spices or fruits or vegetables, may or may not have, some level of tannins. So the big things in controlling your tannins is in the mash, you want to keep the temperature below a certain point near the end of the end of wort collection. That's assuming that you're doing continuous sparging. You basically at the beginning of the mash, at normal mash thicknesses, the pH is going to be relatively low. It's going to be like 5.2 to 5.4, or maybe as high as 5.6. And at that point, you don't really have to be too careful about your temperatures, for one thing, are going to be constrained by the saccharification temperatures. Uh, but you don't really have to worry from a extracting tannins point too much about what the temperature is. But as you sparge with sparge water and sugars get rinsed out of the grain bed, the pH is going to start to climb. And basically, at the end of sparging, if you use continuous sparging, you don't want the temperature to exceed 170 degrees at the same time that the tannin or the pH is over 5.8. That combination leads to extracting tannins. And it's sort of interesting / important to note that some people have got it stuck in their head that over 170, you're extracting tannins, but it's not. It's a combination of the pH and the temperature. For example, in decoction mashing, you take roughly a third of the mash and you actually boil it. So it's at like 215 degrees Fahrenheit because with the solids in the mash, it boils a little bit above the temperature of water. And that actually does extract a small amount of tannins, but nowhere near the amount it would that if you were sparging with boiling water and collecting mash at a pH of 5.8 and a temperature over 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
And is a little bit of tannin extraction, does that go with decoction? Is that one of the reasons why you might do it?
I don't think so. I think it's, in most cases, certainly commercial brewers try to avoid that. And there's a number of ways they can do that, including by making the decoction as small as possible or whatever. It's not a point of decoction mashing. It's something that inevitably comes with it, and they generally try to avoid that because a lot of decoction mash beers are like this really smooth German lagers, and you don't want any astringency in those.
So if you're a batch sparger or a nose sparger or a brew in a bagger, you have to worry less about tannin extraction?
I guess so. I just don't know. I mean, you hear people saying that, but I just don't think it's been studied, in the way that continuous sparging has been studied, because that's, the way that at least most brewers produce it commercially. I mean, I think certainly if you're batch sparging, the first batch you run off, you're not going to have to worry about having extracted excessive amounts of tannins. The second one, even probably not. But you get into third or fourth, and that's an open question to me. I just don't know. And likewise, if you're doing a no sparge thing where you mash and then maybe you add all the water and recirculate and then just run off everything, just by the numbers, you should be, I actually can't think of anyone who's taken the pH of the whole wort when they've got it diluted in the mash lauter tun before they run it off. But you would think it would be low enough that wouldn't be a problem, and it's certainly not a problem that people report in that. So that's something that people with a pH meter and a thermometer and being able to taste tannins need to experiment with to find out. But I don't know the answer to that.
When I started out as an extract brewer, the common words of wisdom were, if you're steeping specialty grains in the brewing water, either as it's coming up to temperature, or if you bring it up to temperature, say at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that, and then you steep the grains in the bag in the water, don't squeeze the bag because you'll get tannins from the grain and other, astringent, harsh off flavors. Is there anything chemically that would back that up as a good practice?
I've heard that too, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how applying a force to the grain bag at a very, macromolecular large scale is going to affect the chemistry. How it's going to extract tannins specifically. I mean, you may just be squeezing out enough extra stuff that you run into problems. Extra stuff there being the technical chemical term. Extraneous materials, the way to say the same thing, but sound like you're halfway literate. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've heard that repeatedly, and I know online there's a big uh, kerfuffle about that, or whether you squeeze the bag or not. But I don't. Well, for one thing, I haven't done it like both ways and tried, so there would be the just the way to get a straight answer. But it just doesn't sound solid scientifically to me that squeezing it would make that much of a difference, or any difference really.
I think part of the argument that I've heard is it has something to do with pH, and the concentration of the darker grains in the water, without the buffering of the base malt of a standard mash, and that when you squeeze the bag, there's an environment for excess tannins to be either created or harvested. But it seems to me that if you're steeping the grain in the kettle in the bag, the stuff that's going to come out is going to be similar to the stuff that would come out if you squeezed more of it out. I mean, it doesn't seem like to me that the tannins would be kind of like hiding in the recesses of the of the bag. I don't know. And again, I don't have any data to support that. I do know that I have squeezed the grain bag in every single brew in a bag batch that I've done, and I haven't had any problems with with tannin extraction or astringent beers or anything like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. With regard to extract brewing, I mean, the only things I would say with regard to tannin extraction and steeping the grains is that the thinner that your sort of steeping regime is, like if you had 4 gallons of water in your pot and like a quarter of a pound of like steeping grains, that's a lot of water per grain. And the closer you are to a mash thickness when you steep, the better off you're going to be. Like if you have a couple pounds of steeping grains and you've got maybe just enough water to cover them in your brew pot, that's ideal, because then you're basically right at mash thickness, and the pH of the steeping water and the grains is going to settle into something fairly close to a mash pH. And although it's not brain surgery, you can go substantially thinner too and still get away with it. But that's the only really thing I would mention with steeping and tannins is just steep in a relatively thick solution and add water to your kettle later, and then also just watch the temperature. Like I wouldn't, you don't need to worry too much about the temperature when you're simply steeping grains, but I wouldn't exceed like 190 or so on a thick steep, and I would not exceed. I'd keep it lower than that, even on a thinner steep.
Yeah, in general, I mean, it's been a while since I've done an extract brew, but in general, my rule of thumb was if it was on small batches, I would bring it up to something approximating mash temperature and steep the specialty grains there. Now, these are specialty grains or specialty malts that don't need conversion. So you're just making a tea, essentially. But on like 5-gallon or 19-liter batches, I would just put the grain bag in there in the kettle while the water is cold, and then just let it sit there while the temperature came up in the kettle, and then take it out at 170 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what, 75 C, something like that?
Yeah, 77.
So that, and again, that seemed to work for me.
That's very common. Another way to do it is just to stir in just enough malt extract into your steeping water so that your specific gravity is like 1010, 1020, something really low. But at that point, then you pretty much don't even have to worry about the temperature at all. because the pH is from dissolving the extract in, it's gonna be pretty low. And you know, even if you go over temperature a little bit with the steep, uh, given the amount of especially grains you have relative to the entire batch is going to be such that you're not likely not going to ruin your beer.
Another tip for extract brewers, now that we're talking about about this, is that you don't have to wait. In the beginning, I used to wait until the water came to a boil, and then put my powdered. Mostly use powdered, dry malt extract. But put the dry malt extract in the boiling water, and then immediately have a risk of a boil over, if not a boil over, full scale. So I learned later that you don't have to wait until the water is boiling to put the extract in. You can wait until it's warm enough to dissolve the stuff and put it in before it comes up to a boil, and that way you manage your brew day a bit better, and you don't have to clean your stove as often. So again, it's been a while since I've done an extract brew. I like extract brewing; it's a lot of fun. So if we are, I'm sorry.
Also, when you're boiling, if you wait for it to come to a boil, when you pour the dried malt extract in, the steam rising off the kettle will already start to gum up your malt extract as you pour it in. So yeah, you can avoid that by adding it earlier.
True that. So if we do have a beer where we want to encourage a bit of tannin extraction, what is the strategy there?
Well, there's a couple different ways. One, the super obvious, is just, and it's the one that traditional lambic brewers follow, is just sparge with water that's hotter than normal. For example, 190 is common for them, and then they collect, a normal amount of wort that they would from that mesh, that grain bed, and with the higher temperature sparge water, they've collected, the last runnings are going to be fairly tannic, and bring the, you've had a lambic. There's a little bit of, it's not an incredibly, the sourness is mainly what creates the puckering in a sour beer, but there's a little bit of astringency in there, and that's probably also accentuated a bit because they use lots and lots of hops in a lambic. They use ones that have been aged so that there's not they aren't high alpha hops. They're low alpha hops that don't bring a lot of bitterness to it, but they add a lot of aged hops, and so that probably accentuates the tannic, the little bit of tannic astringency you see in those. So, just running your sparge water a little hotter will do it. The thing I would say is that unless you sort of practice on a recipe and try it at different levels, you're not going to know. At least the first time is going to be a bit of a stab in the dark at how does this level of temperature translate to how much astringency in your beer. And there's a couple ways you could control that more directly. And one is just flat out cheating. You can buy grape tannin at any whole winemaking shop, and you could just figure out. You just take a small amount of beer, add tannins because they're water soluble, although you're going to be stirring for a while. To figure it out and then dose your whole batch of beer. But then that's then you're adding grape stuff to a beer, which is a grain thing. An easier way, I would say, is, and especially if you're continuous sparging, is to just collect the wort that you want, that you normally would, then divert the runnings to a second vessel, like a smaller kettle or something. Keep running it off until those runnings get a little bit, that wort gets a little bit astringent, and you just tell by tasting. And when it gets to a certain point, that you can detect, and again, it would depend on what level of astringency you're looking for in your beer. But once you can taste it just a little bit, blending it into your beer is probably not going to do much. Once it gets to the point where you can, taste it pretty, it's pretty easy to sense the astringency, uh, dissolving a little bit into your main batch is going to add a little bit because, it'll be diluted. And, if you wait till it's just, like pulling the taste buds off your tongue, and adding that back is going to add more of that sensation. And so that would be, especially for continuous spargers, the way to do it. And it's just as a side note, I think also when you brew, a lot of brewers, when they make big beers, they end up sparging and collecting nowhere near the amount of, they don't get nearly enough of the sugars out of their grain bed before they stop, usually because their kettle's going to overflow, or they just don't want to boil for 5 hours or whatever. It's a very big beer. And one thing is you don't get the normal moderate, sub astringency level of tannins in your beer, and it can make your beer taste funny. And so one thing I think helps both when you're brewing a very big beer and also if you're brewing a party guile beer, is to make sure that every beer you have, whether it's a big beer or your big version in your party guile beer, is put some later runnings that are, not necessarily, they're not super astringent and they're not meant to make your beer astringent, but just they add enough tannins to make your beer taste like beer, not like a fermented sugar solution of maltose.
We did an episode a while back where you talked about poor efficiency of bigger beers or bigger mashes, and you said basically it's not that bigger mashes or higher gravity or mashes for higher gravity beers. It's not necessarily that they're less efficient. It's just that they proportionally don't sparge enough. And collect enough wort. So that's an interesting thing to kind of apply the party guile philosophy and then blend some of that back together to achieve more of that balance.
Yeah, definitely a lot of big beers, and some people I don't think even know or haven't thought that through that they're doing it. But when you think about it, the larger your grain bill is, the more grain you've got in your mash tun, the more wort you should collect. If your goal is to completely sparge the water, the mash tun. If you want to get as much out of the grain as you can, the more grain you have, the more you need to sparge, the more wort you need to collect. And with people who, and a lot of homebrewers do this, if you collect, let's say you make 5-gallon batches all the time. If you collect 6.5 gallons of wort for every single batch, regardless of the original gravity, regardless of how much you have in your mash tun, as the original gravity of your beers go up and up and up, your efficiency going down and down and down, because you're just leaving a bunch of sugars behind in the mash lauter tun. So yeah, and a lot of people know that, and just their kettle's not big enough, or they're fine to either suffer the hit in extraction efficiency, or add malt extract to bump the volume up. But it's worth considering. And some recipe books, for example, the Homebrew Bible by Chris Colby, actually give you instructions on the big beers, what your options are. I'm just saying. Available at Amazon.com now.
And you go to the you've got an Amazon link on beerandwinejournal.com as well, right?
Yeah, I hopefully have several.
So you can always, if you want to support Chris even more, go through the Amazon link on beerandwinejournal.com and then buy the book.
Coming days, like every third word on beerandwinejournal.com is going to be linked to the Amazon thing or the Barnes & Noble thing. Just random words. Sparging, it'll take you to the book. Temperature, it'll take you to the book.
There's probably a name for that.
It's probably standard practice these days on normal websites.
This is true. Well, very good. It's a two-part article or two-part series on beerandwinejournal.com. And there's a ton of other stuff on there as usual. And you actually got to talking about some wine recently. So,
yeah, so we covered the second part of Beer and Wine, that journal.
Always good stuff. So congratulations again. I look forward to getting my copy of the book, and we will talk to you next time.
Yeah, your recipe is in there.
Oh, yeah, well, good. Well, despite that, buy the book. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks again to Chris. The recipe of mine that's featured in the book is my Frankenberry Weiss. And that was a fun brew. I looked back at the video on Basic Brewing video that we did on that, and I don't have the date of that, but if you search on the YouTubes for that, you can find it. The final beer didn't retain any of its Frankenberryness, the color or the flavor, but it was very tasty. So it proves that breakfast cereal can be a legitimate adjunct to your brewing process. It's going to be Frankenberry season again soon, and I want to pick some more of that up and try that recipe again, or maybe do a variation of that. And I want to try to find some Count Chocula as well. And, Blueberry and some of those other fun cereals to play with. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com and just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo. You can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all those out at basicbrewingshop.com. And thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Green Unroasted Coffee, 5-pound bag, Fresh Roasted, LLC, Monsooned Malabar. I used to brew coffee. I used to roast that stuff. It's good. I'm into the Brazilian Cerrado now. And Cisco Supplies Straight Dissecting / Mustache Scissors. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. Well, that's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.